that the age of reason, so-called, is the point at which we are able to recognize that other people are other people. They're not extensions of us. They're not tools to our goals. They're not the means we use to reach our ends. They're genuinely other people and have to be treated and reverenced as such. To fully recognize that, to be struggling constantly to recognize that, that's wisdom, and that's why it's such a great virtue. And it is absolutely necessary to agape, because you see, you can't give yourself away to another if you never notice that there is another. You have to be able to see the other as other if you're going to be able to give yourself to them. And what does that mean? It means never taking the other for granted, which we all do. How often have you heard people use a phrase, perhaps heard yourself use a phrase like, oh, I know her like a book. Well, you see, if you know her like a book, you don't know her because she's not a book. She's a person. So if you only know her as a book, you missed her. If I were you, what I would do is, yes, but you see, you're not. You may try and assist me, you may reach out to me, but you'll never be me, just as I'll never be you. The fact is that we are always in the process of recognizing the otherness of the other. And to genuinely do that is to do something that is rooted in love, in valuing the other, and leads back into love. Because in recognizing the otherness of the other, we have the possibility of giving ourselves to them. What about courage? Well, courage, I can say this much more briefly, and I'll just make an observation. You may have discovered this to be true. You may not regard it as true. I'd be interested to hear later. But I'm inclined to think that the single worst pain that people experience is the pain of being an unrequited lover, of genuinely giving yourself to another and finding that the other says, oh, thanks, and puts you on the shelf, or drops you and you shatter, or never notices that you've given yourself to them, or it never seems to appreciate, to value the depth of the gift you've given them. And the great temptation is to say, well, I'm not risking that anymore. That was so painful, that was so terrible an experience that I'll never risk doing it again. To be willing to say, yes, that was a terribly painful experience. That was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life, and I'll risk it again. That requires extraordinary courage. So that courage is a necessary ingredient of love and is rooted in love. That's true of all the virtues. I think that's what Thomas is on about when Thomas says that charity is the root and the crown of every virtue.